freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us here today at Christ Congregational Church. I'm Reverend Jeffrey Cardisco, the senior pastor here at Christ Congregational. In spite of the cold, it's a true blessing to see so many community partners gathered together in one place to stand in solidarity with one another. We've invited you all here to not only share a painful and violent incident that happened on the street just beyond our driveway, but to also share next steps that we'll be taking as a church community along with the Brockton Interfaith community and others. Most importantly, we're gathered here to affirm again and in community that Black lives matter. This summer, our congregation made a statement in response to the senseless killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, along with the many other instances of violence that take place against our Black and brown brothers and sisters. In part, we recognized then that we've been asleep when it comes to racism and its harmful effects on our community and on our world. We are a multiracial, although predominantly white church located in a diverse city. And we recognize that we've fallen short in the past. With our statement this past summer, we made a conscious choice to no longer be silent and part of the problem, but rather to be a vocal and visible part of the solution, which is to eradicate racism in all of its forms. Earlier this summer, we publicly committed ourselves to move past complacency and to do the work to become a community that embraces and lives out racial and social justice. We stated publicly that it is not enough to not be racist, but that we needed to strive to be actively anti-racist in our thoughts and in our actions. In addition to making this public statement, we placed a large Black Lives Matter sign at the end of our driveway so that we could signal to our entire community that we unequivocally stand with Black lives. Today, just as it has been throughout our country's history, standing with Black lives means something. Today, just as it has been throughout our country's history, standing with Black lives means standing up to and fighting against violent and harmful racism. Today, just as it has been throughout our country's history, standing with Black lives means sometimes experiencing racist violence and racist confrontations yourself. Today, we're here to make a statement and to proclaim loudly and insistently that we're not going anywhere and that our work of pursuing justice will never stop. In a short while, I'll share our congregation's statement in response to what happened on the street in front of our church on November 7th. And we'll share action steps that we would like to invite every person who can hear us today to join us. But first, story is such an important part of all of this. And so first, we want to share the testimony of the individual who experienced this ugly racist attack. And so I'll hand things over to my colleague, Pastor Anne-Marie Ilsley, to share our beloved community members' words.
Good afternoon. My name is Anne-Marie Ilsley, and I serve as the Associate Pastor at Christ Congregational Church. As Pastor Jeff mentioned, what I have to read for you all is a statement, a testimony, the story of our member who experienced this and has asked us to read it on their behalf. While working on cleanup day, contributing to the upkeep of our church grounds appearance for our neighborhood, I heard yelling from the street. "It's your fault," is what I thought I heard, thinking it was a small traffic dispute. It seemed like when I turned away to rake, the yelling got louder. I then realized that there was one vehicle and no pedestrians. The yelling got louder still, so I looked at the white vehicle and saw a man's face out of his driver's side window. He was yelling repeatedly, "You're going to effing die, you N-word lovers." There were a couple of us working on the front grounds, but the others had moved back with the acorn mounds. So I found myself alone with one emotionally charged man yelling at me and pointing at our sign that said Black Lives Matter. At the time, there was no other traffic, so the man felt emboldened to continue his vile rant. I listened to the inappropriate, racially charged hate language while struggling internally for a response. But the threatening manner froze me in the moment. Every time I tried to return to work, it seemed to enrage him further. When another car did come down the road, he drove away, turning onto Sumner Street. I replayed what had occurred and reflected on his spew, but it just grew uglier as I thought more about it. I am proud to be a part of our city and our church. There is so much more positive out in our neighborhoods, which is why I reported the assault. People like that have no respect for our Constitution, our Bill of Rights. I saw no human decency in that moment, and further escalation could be dangerous to others.
Christ Congregational Church is part of the United Church of Christ, and part of our history is the congregational tradition of the Christian church. As a congregational church, we firmly believe in speaking as a community, with input from many voices and wisdom from many corners. We're better together. The statement I'm about to share has been crafted by a number of our church members from our Courage Task Force, and was unanimously and formally approved by our church council. The church council is the governing body of our congregation. We stand behind this statement. Many of the members who worked on this statement and who voted to ratify it at our council meeting are here today. The statement I'm about to read is not made up of my words alone. They're our words. This statement is, without question, a statement that speaks for all of us here at Christ Congregational Church. A statement from Christ Congregational Church, Brockton, Massachusetts, in response to a racist verbal assault on one of our members, December 7th, 2020. On November 7th, a member of our church, Christ Congregational Church in Brockton, was working in our front yard along Pleasant Street when a passing vehicle slowed and the driver stuck his head out his window. Pointing to our large Black Lives Matter sign, the passerby verbally assaulted our member with hate-filled threats. "I hope you effing die, you N-word lover. You are going to die, you effing N-word lover." The previous Sunday, we had arrived for our outdoor church services to find a political candidate placard staked in front of our lawn, directly in front of the center of our Black Lives Matter sign. Both incidents come on the heels of our identifying racial justice last winter as a mission priority for our congregation in the coming years, issuing a public statement last spring recognizing our own complicity in institutional racism, and supporting the protests provoked by the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, and holding an anti-racism prayer vigil in front of our building. The verbal attack last month was something no one should ever have to experience. The person assaulted, who is white, was shaken by the intensity and the depth of the hatred that the driver expressed. It also stirs that member and the rest of us, in particular those who are white, to be ever conscious that this one incident is just a glimpse of what our members of color and our sisters and brothers of color in Greater Brockton and throughout our nation experience on a regular basis, often with more violence and more destruction. We are awakened to the fact that racist hate is not something that only exists in some other place and time. We recognize that it exists right here and now in our own community, and that it can be just as destructive as it has ever been. Here at Christ Congregational Church, we stand with our sisters and brothers of color everywhere in condemning and combating racism in all the ways it devalues black and brown lives, including pervasive institutional racism, entrenched white privilege, and bigoted white supremacy. Genesis 1:27 says that the whole of humanity is created in God's image. Can it not then be clearer that black and brown lives matter? With our community partners such as the Brockton Interfaith Community and other communities of faith, we are committed to working for a more just and equitable future. A future where racism and the power of white supremacy have been eradicated. To that end, we are eager to share that starting on January 25th of 2021, we will be partnering with the Brockton Interfaith Community to facilitate an anti-racism institute that will be available not only to our church members, but to the community at large. Through the course of the training, we will empower participants to not only identify racist systems in Greater Brockton, but to also take steps toward dismantling them. The sign up for the training can be found on a link on our website and on the Brockton Interfaith Community website and on our social media pages. We invite all those who envision a more just and equitable world to join us and to grow along with us as we gain the tools to combat racism here in our own corner of the world. It isn't enough to not be racist. The world needs anti-racists. Today and every day going forward, we at Christ Congregational Church stand with our brothers and sisters of color throughout Greater Brockton and throughout the world to proclaim that black and brown lives matter, that hatred and bigotry have no home here, and that we will not silently hide behind the privilege of our white membership any longer. Our sign will remain, and our work in confronting racial injustice will continue. Now I'd like to pass it over to my brother, William Dickerson.
Peace, everyone. I know it's cold. I'll make it quick. My name is William Harlan Dickerson II. I'm the Executive Director of Brockton Interfaith Community. I'm also a proud member of the DARK Coalition. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12 says, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." As I've reflected even more on what has happened on November 7th, this scripture hits me even deeper. It strikes a resounding chord to the formula of our liberation. How will we all be free? As I reflect on this man's individual actions, I can't help but to remember he is not alone in his beliefs. These people are our nurses and our doctors. They are our lawyers and our food workers. They are in our police force. They sit in stations of political power. And some of them teach our children. In the current structures that exist in our country and in our state, and yes, even in our city, we have a racism crisis. And what is powerful about this scripture is that it reminds us where we should look for our liberation. It reminds us what we are actually fighting against. You see, it is structures and systems. Structures and systems that teach us. Teach us about race. Teach us about whose race is superior to another person's race. It teaches us how to create more structures like it. It is embedded in ourselves, and if we are serious about eradicating racism, we must look deep, deep within. If we are truly serious about eradicating racism, nothing should be off the table. Every part of us, looking at every part of us, y'all, is essential. With that being said, I've been reflecting on opportunities for us to dismantle racist structures in our city and in our state. One of the opportunities that we have right now is that the governor has the authority to pass a racial justice police reform bill. By doing this, by passing this bill as it is, we can see how it will actually change the lives of black and brown folks. So the first question I ask you and to the community is, have you called your governor? Have you made it completely clear, utterly clear, that this thing needs to be passed and needs to be signed? Have you made your voices heard? But I want to just name a couple of the structures that exist in our city right this second. You see, I was on the Brockton website, and I was looking at the 2021 proposed budget of this city. And on page 32, there was a piece that I found really interesting. And the quote was, "With regard to race, healthcare is the most racially diverse industry. 18% of the people that work there are non-white employees." Notice I said the most racially diverse, 18%. Let me give you the statistics from the census. 42.3% of the people that live here in the city are black, identify as black. Somewhere around 30%, because I can't read my handwriting, y'all. Somewhere around 30%, 30 to 35% is white. And then 11% of the population here are from the Latinx community. So when you look at the numbers of the amount of people that live in the city who come from other races other than white, it is much higher than 18%, am I correct? So the structure itself of how people are employed should reflect that, right? The question we have to ask ourselves is, why not? something is afoot. Something is not racially right. What we are trying to do is we got to go after the structures themselves. Because the structures themselves protect the people who show up in racist ways, and they train us how to be racist. And at the very least, continue to perpetuate the racist and oppressive structures that many black and brown folks have to face every day. I want to hold something up to y'all because this is an action step. And then I'm done. I see y'all masked up and shivering. I'm sorry. So I want to hold this up. This is the bit.ly, and it is going to lead you to a pledge. A racial justice pledge that Brockton Interfaith Community has created, that we want every person here and every person reading, every person listening, we want every person to fill this thing out. It's a very simple pledge. I'll let you look it up for yourself. I just want to hold this up just one more minute for you. You can't hear me? Oh, you can't see it. All right. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. I'll make it quick. So bit.ly/anti-racism pledge. I'll say it one more time. So it's bit.ly/anti-racism pledge. This is an action step. And this action step, what it is actually going to do is when you fill out the pledge, it will send you the opportunity to do 3 things. And then you get to decide. You get to decide how you want to show up in this anti-racist, as an anti-racist. One is it's going to give you a script to call the governor so we can get this thing passed. It isn't perfect, y'all, but it is the most comprehensive thing we've been able to see in the country. We still got work to do, but the part of that should be we should pass this thing. Let him know. 2, it's also going to give you a script so that you can call your local public official and announce to them that you are an anti-racist and you plan on working with other people that are anti-racist to get rid of the structures and dismantle the structures that continue to perpetuate racism in our city. And if you're feeling really bold, ask them to join you publicly. And then 3, it will give you a way to sign up for the Anti-Racism Institute that will be coming in January. My dear sister Anne-Marie is just going to briefly close us out. Thank you for being here. This is one stance. Right now, you are making a stand. Thank you.
Friends, I want to thank you all for joining us, for braving the cold, for joining us online, however you are joining us. We thank you. I want to thank those who have shared their stories and their words today, and also the folks who have made it possible for those to be heard, digitally and in all the ways that we're sharing them. If I can echo what Pastor Jeff said, that speaking out in this way and making a public commitment to action is a newer path for our congregation. And humbly, we are eager to join our community partners who are engaging and have been working on this. We're doing powerful work. But I want to extend a special invitation to anyone who might be out there watching this, for whom this feels newer to you too. That maybe you felt that pull, you've heard stories, and you felt a pull deep inside to do something. Join us in this. Join us in making this pledge. Join us for the Anti-Racism Institute. Join us in contacting your governor or your local political officials. Join us in this journey. And again, thank you.
That concludes our press conference, everyone.
And if anyone didn't get a copy of the statement that would like one, I have copies as well.
It's so nice to meet you. Can I just bump you a little bit? Yeah. Oh, we're looking forward to getting together. Our kids. I was hoping my son was going to be here today and my wife so you can meet him, but we want to get together, y'all, as soon as possible.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
So much energy
we look forward to that
behind
as well. I actually got to go grab
Publicly and with
grab
action.